Someone with access to the files released it. That leak punctures every talking point the Unification Church may have left. Members of the Unification Church, wake up! Welcome to the Anti-Liars, where we always seek the truth and dispel the lies. Greetings. I am your host, Howard Self. Before we begin, please take a second to subscribe to our channel and click the notifications bell so you can receive updates each time we upload a new episode. In the last episode, we revealed the first and greatest sin of the Unification Church leaders and how they defied the providential mandate announced by Reverend Sun Myung Moon to end the church. These leaders instead maintained the church institution and took the movement in a direction opposite of its original mission. In the process, they lied and withheld critical information about Reverend Moon's directions and Dr. Hyunjin Moon's appointment as the successor in order to maintain their power and control. More truth is coming out almost daily, and you may be surprised as to who the sources are of this new information now going to the media. There have been some recent developments in Korea, and I would like to let our brothers and sisters of the Unification Church know about them. To give you a quick background, on October the 21st, a major TV channel in Korea, MBC, did a special on Mrs. Hak Ja Han in their investigative news program called PD Supchup, or in English, The Producer's Notes. On air, the reporter shared that when the network asked the public for tips, files, and letters came pouring in. From whom did all this information come? The reporter stated that they came from sources within the Unification Church, including a vast number of files from second and third generation Unification Church members. Included was a USB file with financial information that informed the network about donation numbers and palace construction cost. Members of the Unification Church, wake up! Your own second and third generation are leaking photos and video files and sending letters to the media. Many of them do not want to have anything to do with this religion that you have built. Information about donations and financials are coming out into the public from within your own religion. Your own foundation is bleeding. And can you not see what the rest of the world now sees? The Unification Church / Family Federation is coming to its end. In Japan, the government is calling for the official dissolution of the Unification Church. And in Korea, the Unification Church is now under severe investigation, and the public sees it as a criminal entity. These actions by the second and third generation is a serious indictment for those who chose to stay within the Unification Church even after Reverend Moon declared the end of the church, and for those who chose to go on to build this only begotten daughter religious group, which utterly and totally rejects all of Reverend Moon's own teachings. Let us get into today's episode and examine the Unification Church and the collapse that is happening from within. Before going into the recent leaks to MBC, I would like to rewind to the final year before Reverend Moon's passing and some important footage that was also leaked from within the movement. In the last episode, we addressed the UC leaders and their first and most serious sin, rejecting Reverend Moon's proclamation to end the church and disobeying the providential mandate to dismantle HSA UWC. They took the movement in a divergent direction and instead created the present-day so-called Unification Church. This was a time of great conspiracy and deceit by the UC leaders, who later roped in Mrs. Hak Ja Han and Shan Moon, Kuk Jin Moon, and Injin Moon. During this time, different people of conscience leaked copies of footage that showed Reverend Moon's true feelings about the UC leaders and the reality of the church. Please watch closely this most important video of Reverend Moon shortly before he passed.
어머니 아버지도 하나 돼가지고 지금까지 어머니 아버지 아들 딸이 지금까지 내버려서 사탄 속에 너희들 발밑에 들어가가지고 자기 아들도 축복받았더니 축복이 천국 못 들어갈 그 아들 딸 좀 살고 선생님 아들 딸을 밟아치웠더니 사실을 했죠. 망국지정들이야. 그걸 추려가지고 아벨 위원 중심사가 만들기 위해서는 선생의 아들도 선수의 가정이 완전히 짓밟힌 거예요. 너희들은 무슨 굶어 죽기 전에 교회가 없어서는 안 된다고. 교회 있으면 교회가 도둑질에다가 자기 아들 딸 먹이기에 수고했던 사람들이 천국 들어 하나도 없습니다. 선생님이 있으니 자기 아들 딸 희생시키면서 가인이 죄 가운데 축복받은 것이 이게 천국 들어가도 못 가. 너희들한테 1000만 대 빚을 산채로 바다에 물보고 죽여도 자기 아들 딸에 부를 수 없는 비참한 그 아들 딸 중에서 모아지고 부모님도 봤으면 부모님 아들 딸까지 묶어가지고 밟아 치우던 마음대로 세상에 너들 같은 데가 없었어. 루시엘보다 더 무서운.
This video you just saw surfaced at a time when censorship in the movement was widespread. Reverend Moon's own remarks were being deleted and the truth hidden from the membership. Here in this video, Reverend Moon condemned the UC leaders and clearly stated that it was the UC leaders who maintained the church while destroying his family and the lineal succession he had put in place. This is irrefutable evidence of Reverend Moon's own disapproval of the direction and existence of the Unification Church, and it is condemnation of Mrs. Hak Ja Han and the UC leaders' collusion against his will just 50 days before his ascension. This July 19, 2012 video is a smoking gun. There is nothing clearer than these words from Reverend Moon himself. Ironically, it is neither in the interest of the UC leaders or the only begotten daughter followers to release this video. Yet, here we have it. So how did we get our hands on such footage? We got it because somebody from within the church leaked this most indicting footage. That is a fact. Another damning smoking gun. The UC leaders paint a false picture of Mrs. Hak Ja Han's oneness in heart and in position with Reverend Moon. Mrs. Han has used this to stand on the global foundation Reverend Moon had built, to take action in ways that countered Reverend Moon's directions and misled the members. Even though Reverend Moon chastised and called out Mrs. Han for her lack of unity and blatant collusion with UC leaders behind his back, his words from Hundekes were wiped clean from the record and removed from speech books that were to archive and publish Reverend Moon's words. Finally, at a Women's Federation event, Reverend Moon had to make it clear before the world, at a public event of 10,000 people, that Mrs. Han is not standing by his side or supporting his mission. Instead, he says, quote, "I have no wife. Mrs. Han does whatever she wills," unquote.
어머님을 내가 길러왔어요. 어머니 없습니다. 문 총재 아내 자리도 없어요. 제 멋대로야, 제 멋대로.
Later, more footage emerged, clearly showing Reverend Moon's indignation that Mrs. Han had reversed the original order of God's ideal within the family, and as a result, destroyed his own family.
주인이 누구고, 외가 누구고, 여자가 왜 됐어? 까불어서 이게. 어머니가 큰 벌을 타버렸어. 어머니가 할아버지하고 손자를 타버렸어.
These clips from the Women's Federation event and the salvaged clips from a few damning Hak sessions were also leaked by brothers and sisters of conscience that wanted this truth to be known. These videos from 2012 were warnings to the UC leaders, to members, and to Mrs. Hak Ja Han not to continue down this path of maintaining the Unification Church and not to continue defying heaven's providential mandate and the directives of Reverend Moon and his successor, Dr. Hyunjin Moon. However, the UC leaders and Mrs. Han did not heed Reverend Moon's warning and have continued to create a religion farther and farther away from the original vision and mission to build God's kingdom of heaven here on earth and to live for the benefit of societies, nations, the world, and all of humanity. The new religion the Only Begotten Daughter group has developed is unrecognizable to anyone who follows the divine principle. Like most of you, I am someone who joined the movement to change the world, to serve God, serve my country, and serve all humanity. I see a very different image in the new Only Begotten Daughter's religion. I am shocked when I see the primary focus being on grand palaces and larger-than-life statues of Mrs. Han. Perhaps more disturbing is her message of just believe and follow only me. It is difficult for me to understand how members who knew Reverend Moon and God's providence through him can relate to this Only Begotten Daughter religion. Most disturbing is the very clear and present dichotomy regarding the leadership of the UC. Have you noticed that the current leaders of the UC are the exact same leaders installed during the time of restructuring of the movement in the late 90s? Reverend Moon had installed these leaders because they were closer in age to Dr. Moon, and they were to aid Dr. Moon, who had been acknowledged as the central figure of this transitional time. Reverend Moon announced the end of the church era in 1994, and Dr. Moon was inaugurated in 1998. Dr. Moon was set to dismantle the HSA UWC structure and to build a truly global, interfaith, and multi-sectoral movement settling God's ideal and world of peace. These UC leaders were entrusted by Reverend Moon to be the John the Baptist figures for Dr. Moon and witness to who he was and his anointed role. We have all learned the role of John the Baptist through studying providential history, and we understand that it is Cain's role to witness to and become one with the true Abel figure. However, these UC leaders did not become one with Dr. Moon, and they did not witness about who Dr. Moon was. In fact, they attacked Dr. Moon and they withheld information from members. If you recall the previous episode, I detailed the key parts of Reverend Moon's speech at Dr. Moon's inauguration in 1998 that acknowledged Dr. Moon as the fourth Adam, that Peter Kim did not translate and did not have printed in Today's World magazine. Furthermore, these leaders did not aid Dr. Moon and instead resisted dismantling the church structure and worked to maintain the institution. This is because the church infrastructure is what gave them position and influence over the members. They positioned themselves as intermediaries between the members and Reverend Moon, which afforded them tremendous authority and access to money and resources, which they did not want to lose. Today, Mrs. Han is the self-proclaimed leader of the Unification Church. However, her teachings reject Reverend Moon's teachings. Mrs. Han has advanced a completely new theology, and her theologians even publicly stated that 95% of Reverend Moon's teachings are wrong.
아버님 말씀 잘 들으세요. 잘부터 상처받습니다. 아버님 말씀은 95%가 참 말씀이 아닙니다. 아버님 말씀은 95%가 참 말씀이 아닙니다.
This quote, this statement, was never denied or rejected by Mrs. Han or anyone else in the Unification Church leadership. What is ironic is that the exact same set of leaders that were put in place during Reverend Moon's time are still the same leaders working with Mrs. Han. This clearly shows that these leaders are basically disingenuous and insincere people who are not in their positions due to a matter of faith. I say that because how can leaders from Reverend Moon's time continue to serve as leaders within an OBD church that completely rejects Reverend Moon and his teachings? This discrepancy exposes the true motive of these leaders. Clearly, their motive was not to support Reverend Moon's vision of the end of the church era, nor to aid Dr. Moon's reforms and restructuring of the movement. It shows that they clung to their positions within the church infrastructure simply in order to maintain power, authority, control over members, and in turn, access to resources and funds. If we think about who benefits from the continuation of this church infrastructure, it is clearly not Reverend Moon, who sought to end the church. It is not Dr. Moon, who took on the mandate to dismantle and reform the movement. And it clearly does not even benefit the members who have been misused and lied to by the church leadership. Even as Mrs. Han sits in prison, the only ones who enjoy a position of luxury and power from a church infrastructure are these corrupt leaders. If I explain more about this generation of leaders, they grew up in a post-Korean War time. Because of the success of Reverend Moon's global foundation Their families had access to opportunities that even the rich conglomerate families that we call chaebols in Korea did not have access to back then. They had opportunities to come to America, to live in residences with the best zip codes in the U.S., sending their children to the best high schools, and many of them had access to Ivy League education. They used the success of Reverend Moon's movement for their own career advancement and to benefit their own children. No wonder Reverend Moon was outraged in the video we watched at the beginning of this episode. In his last Hunduke, he said that UC leaders got rich off the church and stole from his foundation. He condemned the leaders, saying they and their children will not be able to get into heaven. This is very, very strong condemnation. These leaders are not sincere men and women of faith. They are power-hungry, deceitful leaders who do not really believe in Reverend Moon's providential work, who took advantage of Reverend Moon and Dr. Moon's global foundation for their own career advancement. Through pushing aside Reverend Moon and his family, including even now Mrs. Han, as we are seeing now in her situation, these leaders seek to change lineal succession to apostolic succession, which would maintain their power and position within the church infrastructure for perpetuity. Again, I say, wake up, brothers and sisters. Is this false new religion what you really want to support? What is the result of this church, quote unquote, created by these self-absorbed clerics? It is revealed in the heartbreaking videos and letters submitted by second and third generation members who don't want to have anything to do with this self-serving, corrupt church. They see clearly that the church feeds off the hard work and donations of families who can barely manage their own basic needs and living conditions, using their blood money to erect statues and arches made of marble, wear lavish royal garbs, build palace after palace, and travel to the United States to gamble. Here is one scene from the NBC coverage where a second-generation member comes to the studio for an on-set interview. She shares about the extreme poverty she had to grow up in and the constant push for donations. For fear of receiving reprisals from the church, she asked for her identity to remain confidential and her voice to be distorted.
네, 엄마 속옷 못 샀어요.
평소에 속옷도 못 살 정도로
거지죠.
그래요?
네. 옛날에 그 기초 수업자를 막 반찬 갖다 쓰는 거 있잖아요. 그런 것도 받았고.
그런 어려운 형편에서도 아현 씨 어머니는 조상들의 원한을 풀어준다는 통일교 조상회원 축복식에 여러 차례 참석해 많은 돈을 지불했다고 합니다.
화장원을 사서 기도드리는 거. 이게 마지막인 줄 알았거든요. 이 끝인 줄 알고 저는 이 집을 사줬단 말이에요. 근데 끝이 아니었어요. 얘네들이 진짜 이제 돈밖에 생각 안 하는구나.
As you heard, many UC families could barely make ends meet. Donations from families were being used for projects that seemed to be more for self-aggrandizement rather than to advance God's providence and benefit all humanity.
주변에서 하는 말이 일반 식구들만 불쌍하다고 11조 내고 헌금하라고 하면 다 했는데 다들 지 맘대로 쓰고.
그 어머니가 떡볶이 장사하면서 냈던 돈이기도 해요. 그 돈이 그 통일교에서 헌신 활동을 계속하면서 계속 돈을 계속 갖다 바치면서 경제적으로 파탄이 났고요. 그래서 결국 60세 때 그 고시원에서 살게 됐습니다.
고시원에서 혼자 사시게 되신 거예요?
혼자, 네, 혼자요. 네. 정말 그 사람들이 0.1%의 양심만 있었어도 그렇게 돈을 함부로 쓸 수가 없어요. 내가 번 그런 돈들이, 내가 빚을 내서 내는 그런 돈들이 정말 하늘의 섭리에 쓰이길 바라는 마음으로 낸 그 돈이 어떻게 그렇게 쓸 수가 있겠어요? 그 사람들이 0.1%의 양심이 있었다면.
The verdict is clear, and the indictment of the only begotten daughter group has come from your own children. Your children, the ones you foolishly were building the church for, grew up inside the corrupt institution. They sat at keyboards, they sat in finance teams, in meeting rooms. They drafted agendas, booked flights, watched who got paid and who got punished justly and unjustly. They know so much how much the movement has degenerated under Mrs. Han and these corrupt UC leaders. They saw how the UC chose to inhumanely turn a blind eye as an ever poor membership were being squeezed harder and harder each year for more donations. They know the membership base in Japan and the United States is tired of being told, quote, everything is okay, unquote, while the bills and the scandals continue to multiply. But unlike you, the next generation had a conscience and common sense. They saw corruption for what it was, and they have decided to reach out to prosecutors, to reporters, to the nation, and to the world. These documents and others are continually surfacing. Summaries of all kinds of meetings are also surfacing. Embarrassing inside videos of Cheongpyeong sessions have surfaced. Gambling expenditures in the millions have surfaced. The palace costs have surfaced. The UC leaders' top secret, quote unquote, legal strategy did not stay secret because someone who was in the room or had access to the footage decided getting the truth out into the public mattered more than their position or title. To your probable dismay, all of this and more has been leaked to the news. Brothers and sisters, these leaks by the second and third generation are mirrors that reflect upon you. Your own children are rejecting the church that you created and are maintaining. They reject the false OBD theology and the infrastructure used to justify purges, donation pushes, proclamations, and power. I invite you once more to explain this. The worse than Lucifer footage, Reverend Moon's own public indictment of the clerics, came from inside the OBD camp. Someone with access to the files released it. Someone decided heaven deserved the truth more than a group of church leaders deserved control. That leak punctures every talking point the Unification Church may have left. It is the smoking gun that unveils the record of manipulation, misinformation, and isolation of an elderly Reverend Moon by the UC leaders who simply took advantage of his age. The children of the first generation have not set out to destroy their parents. They have set out to stop the lie of the church leaders. And in doing so, they became the very instrument of judgment that Reverend Moon foresaw when he warned that the leaders had trampled on his family for the sake of a church. OBD's collapse is a moral implosion from within. Information is presenting itself as quite damning for the leadership, and your children are the ones delivering the truth to the only venues left capable of hearing it, the courts and the press. A plain accounting of what has already surfaced paints a picture of a movement collapsing from within. Insider finance data on a USB turned up on national television. The producers of NBC's Producer's Notes didn't dream it. They received it. A detention warrant sent Hak Ja Han to the Seoul Detention Center. Prosecutors advanced the case and have now officially indicted her, and her trial has begun. These are facts on the public docket. Critical information allegedly came from inside sources. Senior officials faced arrest over alleged bribery tied to political favors, and Chungpyeong, along with multiple other UC buildings, were raided. The coverage is extensive. The dastardly reflex by Unification Church leaders to blame Dr. Hyunjin Moon, the fourth Adam, for their every crisis is the last defense of a desperate and corrupt leadership. Their continuous blaming of Dr. Moon is clearly a false and overused tactic. The facts about the church crisis point in one direction, inward. The whistleblowers, the witnesses, the data couriers, the people with consciences that would not be bought all came from within. The second and third generation grew up looking up to you as their parents, but throughout the schism, they have been losing faith because they are watching you wear Reverend Moon's name on your sleeves as you trade him and his teachings cheaply for new theologies that rejected Reverend Moon, while you allowed the leaders to comfortably stay in their positions of power. They also watched Reverend Moon near the end of his life be used and shamelessly manipulated by those same UC leaders, including Mrs. Han herself. Reverend Moon's messianic mission was never to create a church or religion, but something much larger. He was advancing God's providence and seeking to establish his kingdom of heaven on earth. As we know, God has worked ceaselessly since the fall of his children. Through the Old Testament age, God could establish his foundation of the law. In the New Testament age, Jesus brought a much deeper level of understanding, teaching the very heart of God. Yet, he was blocked from establishing God's ideal. Reverend Moon came on that foundation with the mission to bring universal salvation, which was promised in both the Old and New Testaments. Therefore, Reverend Moon ushered in the completed Testament age in order to settle God's original ideal and bring about a world of peace. And his son, Dr. Hyunjin Moon, is carrying on that mission. Please heed this warning, brothers and sisters. You have been lied to by church leaders who told you that mother and father are absolutely united, lied to about who Mrs. Han is, and led astray from your true roles to become true sons and daughters of God, to co-create with him the kingdom of heaven on earth. Amazingly, everything happening today was prophesied and explained in Matthew 24. Here are a few important passages you should consider. Matthew 24:10. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. Matthew 24:24. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And Matthew 24:37 through 39. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. But in our time, it will probably be a flood of indictments. Please read the entire chapter of Matthew 24. We have included a link below. In the end, Reverend Moon's final videotaped words from his Hunduke were not a metaphor. They were literally a verdict. When he said that the leaders completely trampled on his family, as well as on his son Hyunjanim, and that the leaders are worse than Lucifer, this warning is not only for the UC leaders. It is a warning to all of you, the generation of members that built a church in his name and then betrayed the very heart of his mission. Please heed these words. Reverend Moon called these UC leaders as being worse than Lucifer. But by continuing to live under the lies and deceit of these leaders and supporting the structure they should have ended in 1994, you too are just as much a part of the Luciferian group. Reverend Moon foresaw the consequence of that betrayal and understood that heaven's judgment would not come from the outside, but would rise up from within your own house. And now that is happening. The irony could not be more divine. Your own second and third generation, who grew up within your church system, are the ones tearing down the edifice that you have built. Today, you stand as living proof that Father's words were true. Wake up, brothers and sisters. Dr. Hyunjin Moon continues to carry forward God's providence, Reverend Moon's true legacy, and making an undeniable positive impact in the society, nation, and world. The contrast between the current state of UC and the work Dr. Hyunjin Moon is leading could not be greater. Many in the Unification Church or OBD group now say, quietly, or some aloud, that Dr. Hyunjin Moon is the only solution to their crisis. Let us read Matthew 24:27. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Jesus called himself the Son of Man. Thus, the term Son of Man means the Messiah. Principle teaches that the Messiah must be a man. The Messiah comes to realize God's original ideal and to restore the failures of the two generations in the first Adam's family. Therefore, the Messiah comes as an Adamic figure. Jesus came as the second Adam. Reverend Moon was the third Adam, and he acknowledged Dr. Moon as the fourth Adam. As this passage indicates, just as lightning is visible, the coming of the Son of Man will be evident for all to see, especially through his works to bring peace to the world and elevate spiritual consciousness of all humanity. Brothers and sisters, please take a look at the work Dr. Moon is leading around the world. Just look at the most recent event he held at the 80th anniversary of Korean liberation on August 15th of this year, a pivotal and historical event for the Korean people. He now leads the largest coalition for Korean reunification in the history of South Korea. and prepared over 3 years for that to culminate in the August event of 2025. Even in the midst of turmoil and a media frenzy with the UC investigations and scandal, he testified to his father and the work his family has been involved in for over 4 generations. He rallied the Korean people and the global community around the Korean dream as a moral prerogative and called on the Korean people of the South, North, and the diaspora to own their providential destiny, to live for the sake of all humanity. Along with 300 positive media coverage, the Korean Broadcasting System, KBS, covered the August 15th event live. Of the 3 major broadcast networks, KBS has the widest reach and by far is the most influential. This August 15th event was considered the event of the people on this 80th anniversary. It was even more powerful, meaningful, and impactful than the small, highly politicized event the president of South Korea held that even incited opposition demonstrations. In contrast, Dr. Moon's event was a unifying event, bringing together people from all faiths, people from all political leanings, and from both political parties, from all sectors of society, from civil society, academia, business, government, and all generations, from the eldest generation of Korea to the young children, all standing together as owners of the Korean dream. Millions tuned in to the live event and many reruns that the network ran. Most recently, KBSN created a 1-hour special on the event broadcast on its network. AKU just uploaded this KBSN video on their YouTube channel. In less than a week, it reached over 100,000 views. I invite you to watch it yourself and see how Dr. Moon is moving a nation. You can view the 1-hour KBSN special in the links below. The keynote address delivered the day before, on August 14th, at the banquet commemorating the 80th anniversary of Korea's Liberation Day, was printed in its entirety by 2 of Korea's major national daily newspapers, Asia Today and Korea Times. Why? Because the speech was seen as a timely message that all Koreans should read. In fact, newspapers rarely print full speeches, even for their president. The speech has been uploaded to YouTube and has already reached 300,000 views. We also included the links to both keynote addresses from August 14th and August 15th below. We invite you to view them both. I hope this coverage can inspire you and that you can feel the excitement, the spirit, and the hope that you experienced during the time Reverend Moon and Dr. Moon led the movement together for 10 years. That work has continued, and the foundation has developed even more than before. Brothers and sisters, Dr. Moon has never stopped working for God's providence and advancing the work for national transformation and for building a world of peace. He has continued on this path as a true son before Heavenly Father, creating a movement that benefits all humanity. I hope you can heed the important message of our episode today and make the proper choice at this important time of judgment. Before closing, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel and share this video with other brothers and sisters. May God bless you and your family, And we will see you at the next episode of the Anti-Liars, where we always seek the truth and dispel the lies.